name is Ted Lurchin, and let's see, I was in Costa Rica in 1967 and 1968.
It's Kerry O'Brien. I served in Costa Rica. It was the Costa Rica Group 11 program. We were sent there to augment the growth of basic grains, corn and beans. And in the first year that I served, it rained 211 inches in northern Costa Rica. So whatever I had planted came up about knee high and didn't go past there, which would normally be a failure, but there was a lot of support from the government. And while I was serving in country, I served with the Ministry of Agriculture and Cattle. And they were my bosses. They were the ones that gave me guidance. And I felt very much a part of the country, the town I lived in, identified with the families that I got to know. They treated me like one of their own. The things that I remember that first year where there were just floods everywhere, stories of equipment being taken downriver from one second to the next, playing soccer in the rain for 6 months and nobody complaining, and every day. What I've taken away from all this, I continue to travel. I use Spanish in my job almost every day. I continue to find out about the world and be excited about the next adventure, the next day, and always appreciated the fact that I did serve in Peace Corps.
I'm Lorraine Goldman, and this is Don, my husband. We spent 4 years in the Peace Corps in Costa Rica. We lived in a little tiny town called Curridabat, which was about 3 kilometers outside of the capital of San Jose, and we both worked much of the time in San Jose. We went there were 4 of us, so it was Don and me and our 2 young children, Jessica, who was 5, and Emily, 3. So we were one of those great experiments for the Peace Corps, the family, and it was very successful for us.
I remember, this is one of our enduring memories. We were in one little village in the high Andes, and we'd become separated with Jessica had wandered ahead of us, and the 3 of us were over here, looking in various places, and never even missed Jessica, but we knew she'd be okay. And we just went on and on, and came on a little sort of a house shop. It was mainly a house, very poor house, on the village street, and there inside were 2 not so old ladies and Jessica sitting on the floor sorting beans. We don't know how Jessica got involved. She must have seen them doing it and she knew how to do it, so she just joined them, or she was asked to do it, or whatever. There she was sitting sorting beans, taking out the little chunks of stuff, as if she was right at home. And that became sort of emblematic to us of the way these kids were, and why it was such a pleasure to do what, in after years, people would ask us, how could you do that with kids? How could you have them eat all these different foods? Well, it became hard to explain, because there was a whole way of life that those kids had become adapted to long before Costa Rica that made it not just easy but enjoyable. Another enduring memory of Lorraine's and mine is when she came up against the dean of the school. And this was a rather elderly lady. Remember, this time Lorraine was 31 or 32, and a foreigner, and an outsider, and all that kind of stuff. And here was this dean who was from an old family. And
her brother was the ambassador to the United States, and she had gone to Tulane University, so she was about as perfect as she could imagine herself to be.
Lorraine did some things that that were correct and right from a teaching standpoint, but the old lady didn't like it, and they came to blows almost. And
we didn't come to blows. She fired me.
she fired Lorraine essentially, and so we didn't know quite what to do, but the students kind of did the rest. There was, speaking of students going on strike, her students were going to go on strike. They were not going to stand for it. This was the best teacher they had ever had, and she was being fired. So we got these rumblings of a strike about to happen. So I figured it's about time we get in with our Peace Corps director and have a little conversation. Abe Pena was our director, and a cooler guy you never knew. He was just so good. He supported the troops. He was friends with us. He had us into his home, and it was a wonderful relationship. I went into Abe's office one morning. I was carrying the water for this, and Abe came in, and I said, "Abe, I've got a little story to tell you." And so Abe sat down, and he smokes a pipe, and he just sat there and smoked his pipe for the 15 minutes it took me to tell this story. And he never said a word, never interrupted me, just puffed on that pipe. And when I finished, and I told him that we didn't know what was going to happen, the kids were having a meeting that day, maybe at that same minute, and we didn't know what they were going to do, but they were really pissed, and they loved Lorraine, and they were going to support her. And we didn't know. And so I said, right now, all we know is they're talking about strike.
This, by the way, is sort of a favorite pastime of Latin American students. I can remember when we went back to visit one time in Costa Rica, and we drove up to the campus, and there was this gigantic sign, Huelga. I think they spent more time on strike than in class.
I think they gave a course on how to conduct them. Anyway, so when I finished, I could just see us having to pack our bags, and Abe just sat puffing for maybe 10 seconds, and then he said, "I'm going to be playing tennis with the ambassador today. I'll take care of it." I said, "Lorraine's okay?" He said, "You guys are great. Well, nothing's going to happen. Let's just hope the kids don't go out on strike. Let's hope that the administration folds," which is what they did.
Yeah, and I was never forgiven by Dr. Zuniga, ever, for that. And she never forgave some of my colleagues who were part of my side. So it was a tense situation, but pretty interesting.
But the thing it taught us was what Abe was made of. Abe, incidentally, lives about 50 or 60 miles from here in the town of Grants, and he's retired, and we've kept in touch with him. Wonderful man, and he really showed it when this happened.
My real name is Mary, but all my friends call me Lindy. So I go by Lindy Lindemann, although in Peace Corps the kids would call me Maria. So when I had a bicycle and I went down, I was in Costa Rica. I was in Costa Rica starting in 1977, and I came home in December of 1980. For 2 years I lived in Turrialba, which is, there's a volcano named Turrialba, and so it was in the foothills. One of my favorite stories about the volcano was I took the kids on a picnic. My assignment was to start the YMCA. The people had electricity recently. They had one light bulb in their homes. They didn't have lampshades. So I worked with the women and make macrameing lampshades. This is 1977, okay, a little bit hippie-ish, whatever. But so the women, generally speaking, didn't have an opportunity to get together. They waited for their husbands to come home from work. Sometimes they went out drinking or whatever, and then they created a fire and they warmed their food, but they had little socialization. So doing the macrame allowed them to work on a project, leave their knots as they were, and then come back at a later time. So I took some kids on a picnic, and I remember taking a picture of the volcano. Well, in the morning I would step outside of my house up on the hillside, not up by the volcano, but up that direction. And I would brush my teeth looking up at the volcano because later in the day, the clouds, being on a narrow peninsula of Central America, the clouds would come by and they would block off the view. So I took these kids on a picnic, and lo and behold, there's the volcano. So I got my camera out and I took a picture. And if you spoke Spanish, I'd say it in Spanish, but basically they said, "Why are you taking a picture of nothing?" Because to them, you always took people pictures. And I was taking a picture without people, and that puzzled them. So I had a motorcycle to go to these villages. That was one of the benefits of having this with the Department of Agriculture. So yes, for these every 2 weeks I went to a different village, and sometimes you went up and down these hills, and if you couldn't go up, sometimes you went back down and started again. It was a Yamaha, and I think it was a 120, but by the time I got it, was so beaten up, it was about a 60, but it was wonderful to be able to go out and lift your legs as you go over these rivers, and you're going up, and sometimes it rains and you have to spend the night and with the generator out in the village. It was just wonderful. I'm so glad I had that village experience. My aunt had sent down some clothes that were store-bought, and this woman had never had any store-bought anything. So she had a white blouse and a black skirt, and she went out and caught a chicken for me. She insisted. So it's tied onto my motorcycle and still alive. And here I am trying to go down the road, and it's like, I can't, when people say, "Oh, you were in Costa Rica," that's Beach Corps, not Peace Corps. And in some ways it is a bit cushy, but at the same time, when I was there, I really feel that I did help them move to the second world or the first world, because the same rafting company, if I had brought the brochure, the initial brochure, it's still there, Rio Tropicalis. And I do feel that I had some seeds that I left to help people be as successful as they are today.
Hi, my name is Ricardo. I was in Costa Rica from 81 to 83. I lived in Quepos.